And why don't we start with one that I thought was really fascinating for me from a couple perspectives, and that is that Databricks and Anthropic have announced an agreement, what they're calling, of course, a landmark deal, to bring Claude into the Databricks data intelligence platform. I think this is smart on both counts. I think Anthropic
hmm
is clearly signaling a push into the enterprise, and I think from a market perspective, clearly distinguishing their approach to, say, OpenAI, which seems very focused, as we'll talk about later in the episode, very focused on these sort of public-facing, capture the imagination of the public kind of motions. And Anthropic seems to be the quiet player in the background focusing on these enterprise use cases. And if I had to bet, I'd say that's a better business model in the long run. So this Databricks announcement is certainly a part of it. And we'll talk about what Anthropic also did, or also sort of has transpired that I think is going to further solidify this. But this announcement, I think, of course, Databricks is a major enterprise player, massive footprint in the enterprise, in the sweet spot of these data platforms. I think a super smart move for Anthropic, and not to be lost on this is Databricks is also making some very smart moves across the board as we've been talking about. So I think this is a win-win for both of them. But in the grand scheme of things, I think probably a bigger win for Anthropic because I think they have um, more coattails to sort of ride with it. But what was your take on it?
Yeah, first of all, on the Databricks side, I think Databricks has always been really smart about their partnerships. They are, I feel like almost like the Informatica of data science, in that they're happy to be an intermediary between all of the giants that are out there, of course, becoming a giant themselves in the process. So they work with Amazon, they work with Microsoft, they'll work with Google, they'll work with anybody who also is willing to sell Databricks back, as we saw with the SAP Data Cloud, basically another SAP Databricks announcement. So now they've figured out a partnership with Anthropic, and the timing is good because the Claude 3.7 Sonnet model in particular, not a fantastic name, but it has had a fantastic impact on the coding world in just the past month. Developers using this notice that they see a real difference with the hybrid reasoning model that the 3.7 Sonnet has provided. And this has led to, and that's good alignment with Databricks, which has always had good alignment with the developer community as well. So a lot of good things that are coming together all at once. And Databricks saw that Anthropic's product got to the point where they had to have a stronger relationship to keep their enterprise customers happy.
Well, I think there's a handful of really interesting elements to this. First, most of those partnerships you described with Databricks is Databricks being the enabler, right?
Mhm.
Where they are an enabling component of somebody else's technology that is more customer facing. This one's a little bit reversed, right? So this is Anthropic is sort of the enabling component. And in this case, really sitting there on top of the Databricks Mosaic AI to provide the access to these models to effectively activate this data. So it sort of brings Databricks a little bit closer to the edge in terms of direct usability.
Mhm.
So it'll be really interesting to see how this gets applied. I expect it's still going to be in a composite mode, and that again is, I think, really solid because in theory that should mean that Anthropic effectively gets access to all these other partnerships Databricks is driving, right? Because now this becomes a built-in part. I think the other thing that was interesting is this is not, partnerships in the world of tech are sort of like speed dating. It's like they come and they go. This, I think, they called it landmark, and while I think there's a little bit of hyperbole in there, it is significant that this is a 5-year deal. That this is not a fly by night sort of, hey, yeah, if this works, this works. This is a very deep partnership, and I think that is again, I think very positive for Anthropic given where Databricks is playing. So, yeah, I think very good for both. I think honestly good for the industry. I think we need to see
Mhm.
more and more of this sort of evolution. So I think quite interesting to see how
Yes,
this continues to play out.
and like you mentioned before we started recording, this pushes Anthropic further into the enterprise space, which OpenAI was making a lot of great progress as an enterprise AI provider. And here's Anthropic showing where we're going to play in that space strongly as well and build those relationships and get into the nitty gritty of the governance and integration with platforms that is necessary to be in the enterprise space.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see, and in fact, our next story here, I think, sort of also links into this kind of the distinction between the approaches, right? So OpenAI's model has, from the within the enterprise, has mostly been here, give all of your employees ChatGPT, right? That was sort of the approach. And I think that's good to a point. And as we've talked about many times, I use these tools all day long, every day. It's like I get it. I understand the value in that. But the deeper transformative aspects of AI come from the deep integration of AI, particularly generative and agentic AI, into actual operating workflows. Well, that means it has to be linked to data, and that means it has to be linked much more intrinsically and dealing with things like governance that you talked about. And that's where I think the alignment with Databricks, where it's not as flashy, it's not as splashy, it's not as in your face. Like there may people may not even understand, and Anthropic is under the covers, but it's going to be a much richer placement, I think. So we'll see.